Spine is a 2D animation tool for games. Animating with Spine is done by attaching images to bones, then animating the bones. Traditional sprite sheet animations take up an enormous amount of space and are tedious to create. Spine animations are tiny, easy to create, and provide much more mileage from the same art. Spine has many powerful features to bring your animations to life. Meshes allow images to bend and deform in realistic ways. Meshes can be bound to bones. Then when the bones are animated, the images are deformed automatically. Spine's intuitive tools organize your project and animations. The dope sheet provides a detailed view of an animation, allowing you to easily refine timing. Inverse kinematics simplifies the animation process and enables advanced animations with less effort. Spine's workflow doesn't stop at designing your animations. Spine provides runtimes to be integrated into your games to render your animations just as they do in Spine. Spine skeletons can be manipulated through code at runtime to react dynamically to what is happening in the game. Aim at the mouse cursor, look toward nearby enemies, change which images are attached, and much more. Spine provides a start-to-finish solution, from creating amazing animation all the way to integrating it into your games. Join the animation revolution and bring your games to life using Spine.
Hi Mario, thank you so much for being part of the interview series. It is an honor to have you here. Can you start with the introduction of yourself?
Sure. I'm Mario. I live in Austria, in Graz. I put on my grown-up person pants today, just for you. I've been doing game development or game development related things on and off for the past probably 25 years or so. And while I have only written a handful of games, I have a bit of experience in the whole community and industry, on the merit that I wrote books, or a book, that I created a game development framework, and that I'm part of a thing that's pretty relevant to the game development community in form of Spine, which is a 3D skeletal animation software.
This is, those have been major contributions actually, and I would love to dive a little bit deeper into the history. Again, you mentioned that you started also with writing a book and then creating this framework. But can you tell us more details about how did you get into that, and what were the single steps towards those contributions? Pretty much everything.
Okay. So in the 90s, I got a Game Boy. I thought maybe I could do that as well. So I started looking into programming with the help of a neighbor of mine. No programming. So I spent the 90s in DOS, MS-DOS, and programming QBasic and assembler. And eventually I switched through all kinds of platforms and technologies, and around 2009, the big mobile craze started happening, and I got my first Android phone, which is when I decided that development for those Android phones is terrible, because it takes so long to change a line of code and then see it run on the device. So I created a framework that lets me write all the code and run it on the desktop and make sure that it also looks the same on Android. So I have much smaller iteration cycles between code or asset changes and seeing that in-game. And out of that, LibGX was essentially born, which is the source game development framework I developed back then. Wrote a blog, or set up a blog and wrote about it, and also wrote about a bunch of Android issues that eventually got fixed. and was eventually approached by a publisher and asked to write a book. So I wrote a book of 750 pages um, in 6 months, which was a fun experience. And it wasn't about libgdx. It was about Android game development. So essentially taking the APIs, the application programming interfaces from Android, and building a tiny little framework on top of that, which of course kind of looked like libgdx. And going through a range of different types of games that you can create for mobile, starting with a snake game, I think, and I don't actually remember anymore what types of games were part of the book. Yeah, and from then on, things got interesting because I got contacted by companies like, I don't know, Media sent me like a preliminary development version of a tablet with their Tegra chipset, and Intel sent me the Intelli, what was it called? RealSense 3D depth sensor and stuff like that. And I was invited to conferences to speak. And I was also hired by a company in San Francisco that worked on mobile games. So I moved there for a little bit, helped with that, moved back to Austria because Austria is just nicer, I think. And meanwhile, through all of that, I got to know my best friend Nate, who was pretty instrumental in the whole libgdx thing in the beginning. And we kept working on libgdx. And eventually our paths kind of split after the San Francisco thing, where he also worked, and he started working on a 2D skeletal animation software, which I found to be an incredibly dumb idea. But I still supported him in the endeavor by just helping him get the Kickstarter out and advertising it a little bit. While I was working on other things, together with two friends from Sweden, we created a startup for a mobile development tool that lets you write Java code. So you can deploy it on Android and can also deploy it on iOS. And so we did the thing. He did Spine, the 2D skeletal animation thing in games, and I did the what's called RoboVM thing, which took like 2 years. It got sold, then it got shut down. And then I joined Nate in his endeavor with Spine, also doing stuff on the side. Like a year or two ago, I helped the architects in my office create a virtual reality thing for a customer of theirs, so they could around the new remodeled kitchen in one of their filialen. I don't know the English term. Yeah, and stuff like that. I try to keep busy, but my focus is definitely on Spine in the past few years.
This is exciting, and yeah, I mean, very, very interesting and important contributions you made in the past. Like, chapeau to that. I mean, you already mentioned a little bit Spine. Can you tell us more about Spine? I think this would be very, very interesting to hear, like how, like,
Sure.
yeah,
So I think before the interview part, there's the trailer for Spine, and that
exactly.
probably already told most people what they need to know. But Spine essentially fills a niche that hasn't been filled in many years. That is 2D skeletal animation. So you have your character or your or whatever you have. You split it up into images, and then you create a skeleton out of bones, which are connected to each other. And you attach those images to the bones, and instead of having to manually draw frame after frame like in a Disney animation, you can just move around the bones, and the images will follow the bones according to specific rules that you can set up. There's a wide variety of things you can do with this, but it's especially great to be used in games. And Nate, he started out by writing a game, as is usually the case, and thought, oh, this is terrible. Getting the assets, he worked together with Soren, which is also one part of Spine, an animator. So they together figured the creation of assets for these games taking way too long. So Nate just sat down and wrote a thing real quick. Just a real quick thing, So Soren could more easily animate, and that eventually blew up into Spine. That was in 2013, I think, so 7 years now. And moving forward to 2020, I believe we can say with confidence that we have essentially eaten up all of that market, all of the 2D skeleton animation market. And we are happy to count the biggest names, but also the smallest names, games to our customers and users. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it is. This is such a really, really wonderful and important product. Can you share a little bit with us your future plans? Like, where does the maybe like let's split this question into two. What are like the next steps, and also what is the big vision? Maybe not. You don't have to think
So,
company wise, but it can also be like personal.
sure. For Spine, we worked on a big update this year, which is all about, as usual, making the lives of our users easier. That sounds like a commonplace cliche thing to say, but the focus that Nate puts on the UX of Spine is essentially the differentiating factor between Spine and possible competition. It's not about, I don't know, could come up with something like a deep learning motion capture extrapolation kind of thing. We could do that, but that doesn't really pay off for the end user. It's great to have in your portfolio and in your marketing materials and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, for the user, it's more important to have workflows that actually are super easy to use, that help you collaborate, and that is where we focus on. So I could detail the changes we made this year, but I think for the general audience of this, it would probably not make so much sense. The future, we are currently not really focusing on games. Obviously, we are focusing on games, but that's just a side effect of where we come from. I believe that there is a way to also bring Spine to other areas, mobile development, for example. There's obviously been a clear trajectory to make mobile applications more fancy by introducing animations. So we're looking into expanding our market a little bit, but within our means. That's the general way we want to go. What makes sense to both us and the end user, and not so much hunting the next big thing that usually doesn't work out anyways. And for me personally, I want to do my first 7C outdoor bowler thing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. The next question I think is a very interesting one because you have so many angles on that. I mean, you come with so many different perspectives and backgrounds. So I think the advices you could give young developers could be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm very cautious when it comes to giving advice because everybody's situation is a tiny little bit different. In general, if you feel good about doing a thing, keep doing it. If you feel bad about doing a thing, and that especially means being employed somewhere or starting your own company and it doesn't feel right, don't feel you have to do this. I mean, you're financially or economically dependent on that, obviously. Make sure you got money to eat. But if it's within your means to change a bad situation, then do that. And don't stick to things that make you miserable. That's actually the only advice I can give that I feel is probably valid. Maybe, I don't know, can't tell you how to break into the industry. It's probably the same as with any other industry. The thing, show it to people, apply to jobs, or create your own studio, whatever. Honestly, I think there's probably a lot more people more qualified talking about that kind of aspect. For me, it's mostly about feeling good about the things I do.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's a very, very important point. The last question might be a delicate one. I mean, 2020 has been a weird and challenging year, I think, for every one of us, and every one of us had to cope with different challenges. How was it for you? And are there any specific learnings you had? How did you cope with the challenges? And maybe also, what are you looking forward to when things are getting a little bit more normal again?
Well, I live in privilege, as you can see, so it hasn't been hard in that sense. From the spine perspective, we've been a remote team since the start, so nothing changed there. Obviously, not being able to see your friends and family sucks hard. And there was no learning I could share that made that any easier. Vacation, I assume, not the same as hugging your parents. I don't know. Looking forward, vaccine and the effects it will have on the spread, and with that, the opening of everything. So hang in there.
Mario, thank you so much for your thoughts and for your interesting insights. It has been a pleasure. And yeah, bye
Yeah,
bye.
thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you.